So welcome everybody for coming along to this afternoon's feature feedback session on the Aristotle Metadata Registry. Hopefully everyone can see the slides in front of me. And what we're going to do up front is, I think, probably the most important part. And we're going to do a little bit of a background to what we can do to kind of secure our accounts online. And this isn't just for Aristotle, this is kind of for everybody as well. So what can we do to make sure our accounts are secure, and how is Aristotle supporting this? So what we're going to run through this afternoon, we're going to look at authentication and authorization and how are they different and what do they mean, because they will come up. What is single-factor authentication, and then what's multi-factor authentication, because we're going to be talking about this quite a lot in Aristotle coming up. What's single sign-on, and what's a password manager, and how can I keep that secure? And then lastly, we'll do a little bit of a workshop around how all of these can actually be done through Aristotle as well. So the first half is going to be really focused on general kind of, how can I keep my account secure and what do these terms mean? So if somebody comes to me and asks, can you do multi-factor authentication? We're all going to be experts in about 5 minutes time, I hope. So the other thing is just be sure to always check with your organization. In your personal accounts, you can do a lot to secure them, but when it comes to your work accounts, always make sure that you're conforming with IT requirements as well as your own personal interests as well. So the first thing to look at is authentication and authorization. Like, what is the difference between these? Because when we talk about logging onto a system, they are really important. And basically, like, as you can see, the two questions here, they can be summed up as like, are you who you say you are? And are you allowed to do something that you want to do? And a really easy example is looking at what happens when we go to get on a plane. Hopefully we'll all be starting to do that really soon. And it comes down to, when I go to get onto a plane, the very first thing that I have to do is I have to go through customs, and somebody is going to check my passport. They're going to say, is this individual who they say they are? Can I trust them? Will I allow them into my secure facility? And then the next thing comes down to, can I go to the places that I want to go? If I have a first class ticket, I might be able to go into the lounge. Now, the lady at the desk probably isn't going to check my ID. All they want to know is, do I have a little bit more identification about who I am? They're going to want to check my ticket to see what seat or what gate I'm going to go to. So it's the difference between, are you who you say you are, and are you allowed to come in? So the real world example for us when we're looking at managing this is, our authentication is our password. Like, when we log on, we say, hey, I'm Sam, I'm here to log on, and I'd like to hop onto the platform. And the next one is like, authorization is, am I allowed to do certain actions? Can I delete something? Can I edit something? Can I move things? Can I add people? It's all around those actions. So it's the difference between being able to log on and then being able to do stuff in the system. So real big takeaway is authentication and authorization, they're a little bit different, and they are really important when it comes to managing these kind of things. So what does authentication mean, and how does it work in practice? Well, what we can look at is, we can look at, again, trying to log on to a website. So for this example, we've got Bob. Bob wants to access a site, and that site in our example is, he's got an Aristotle Metadata Registry and he wants to log on to it. So the first thing he does is he says, hey, I'm Bob. I'd like to use my account and I'd like to do certain things. Now, Bob's username or Bob's email, I think somebody's just on got their stuff. I'll just turn that. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so we've got one piece of public information. I can tell people I'm Bob, or I can tell people, when I log on to my account, my username is bob@mydomain.com. It's not private, so it's not really being used to check who I am. So the first question my server asks is, how do I know this is Bob? Is Bob able to actually access the site? So what we need to do is we need to provide something else. There's got to be a little bit more information I can provide that will get me access to this site. So Bob comes along and he goes, "Hi, I'm Bob. I really want to access this website." And what happens is Bob can give one private piece of information. He can give a password. So everybody understands my password is mine. It protects all of my accounts. I won't share that with you, but I can tell you my email. So I've got one factor of authentication. If I tell you my password server, you'll know that it's me. So it knows that this is Bob's password and it goes, "Great, welcome Bob. You can come and you can log on to the site." So that's single factor authentication, is knowing or having one private piece of information. Multi-factor authentication is then kind of going a little bit beyond that. So Bob's come along again and he said, "Hey, I'm Bob and I have a password." And the server goes, "Well, Bob said he had something extra. There's something more. If this is really Bob and not somebody who's kind of pinched Bob's password, which might be hard to change, he'll have the token as well." So he goes, "Can you prove that you're Bob? Can you tell me that you're the person who you say you are?" And Bob will pull out his mobile phone, and I'll show you some examples of this in a second, but he'll pull out a mobile phone or some kind of device that will show off a specialized token that he can use to pass back. So he says, "My token is, some 6-digit piece of information, which only Bob has because he's got it in his pocket on his phone or on his keychain." And then the server goes, "Well, that definitely matches Bob's special token, so Bob can come in." So the reason we call it multi-factor authentication, or sometimes two-factor authentication, is it comes down to having two things that only you're supposed to know. So if you have those two things, you've got two-factor. If you're using more than that, you've got multi-factor. And if you can pick and choose around how you configure those two pieces of information, your password and something else, that's why they call it multi-factor authentication. So the idea, the way that people kind of break this down when they describe it is single factor is something you know your password and you have to keep that secret. The reason, the way that they sum up multi-factor is it's something you know, like your password, and then something you have on you that you can use to identify who you are. Now, we've said the mobile phone, but there's other devices out there. So there's secure ID tokens. So everybody's probably seen like a high-level system administrator will have one of these hanging off their pass card, but there's other little USB devices that you can use as well. And the idea is that these will generate a little time-based token, and they're only usable for a short period of time. So the idea is, like, if you don't have this and you need to run off and get it, by the time you get it, the token's going to expire. And it means that if this got leaked, if somebody took these numbers down, they're only really valid for about 40 seconds or 60 seconds until the device refreshes. So I know that as long as I keep my token safe and I keep my password safe, if I lose either one, then my account is still safe. And then the last thing, if you're interested, we'll put up some examples later. But the idea is there's a couple of different devices you can use for this, either a device you can buy or an app you can download, like Authy or Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. There's a lot of options out there, and we'll show you how to find those in a second as well. So in general, it works a little bit like this. When you go to set up your two-factor authentication, you just pull out your phone, you scan this little code, this little QR code. It'll register with your device, and your device will say, "Hey, great, I am now registered to provide you tokens to that website and that website only." So you can have different tokens for different, or you will have different tokens for different websites that make sure that all of them are kept a little bit separate. And what will happen is when you go to log in, and we'll show you this in a second, when you go to log in, you'll be able to enter your username and password. And then often they'll say, well, enter the token as well. So you can enter a token, and then once you log in, everything works fine. And then, so after we've got multi-factor authentication, another thing we can start looking at is this thing called single sign-on. We've kind of put these slides in here because people have asked us about how to configure single sign-on with Aristotle, and we wanted to make sure that people understood what these terms mean to move forward. So single sign-in is basically a way of getting somebody else to help you sign on if you don't want to keep your password with Aristotle. So what will happen is Bob will go to log in and he goes, hey, Aristotle, I'm ready to log in. And Aristotle goes, well, I can't identify Bob, but I know someone who can. And it'll go off and it'll ask a corporate server, can you verify for me that this is actually Bob trying to access his account? The corporate server will then say, hey, Bob, I need you to log in with me. So this might be logging into a Google account. It might be logging into, the same account that you log in when you access your emails at work. Or it could be any number of ways, like different ways that have been configured for your organization. The idea is rather than keeping your password with Aristotle, it stays within a centralized location. Once Bob's logged in, he logs in with his username and password and whatever other devices have been set up. The corporate server can then just say back to Aristotle, yep, this is Bob. I trust him. Bob has told me all the information I need to verify that it's definitely Bob. Well, if I can trust the corporate server, then I can certainly trust Bob, and Bob can then get access to the site. Again, the really big advantage here is that all of that password management is managed, inside the organization, and all that's passed out is just, again, a little like one-time token that goes from server to server that says, hey, you're allowed to trust this user for this period of time. And then the last thing to look at is especially relevant when it comes to like just generalized password management. So this isn't anything special about Aristotle, and this is definitely an area where you do want to start managing or talking with your IT managers around what is and isn't allowed, especially within the corporate environment. But we thought if we're going to be doing a really entry-level talk on web security, we thought we might package this in because not a lot of people are aware of these. And these are something that we actually enforce at Aristotle to keep our passwords really secure and really separate. So often when you go to log in, if it's been 30 or 60 days, you get a notification from the server saying, hey, I need you to update your password. You need to change it. And it needs to be some combination of letters and characters and numbers that is almost practically impossible to keep in your head, and it frustrates you. Not only does it make you swear a little, it kind of, generates a thought bubble that says, I can't even do this. Like how am I supposed to manage 15, 20 different passwords for different areas and have them all be kept separately and they'll all have different rules? Well, fortunately, there are some really good tools out there. And again, like I said, as the chief executive of Aristotle, we've actually enforced these internally to make sure that nobody reuses a password anywhere across any of the services that we use internally. And the way this is done is with a piece of software called a password manager. What a password manager is designed to do is it allows you to kind of keep in your head one password. Now, obviously, it'll be a little bit stronger than the example here, but you can keep in your head a really strong passphrase that only you know that you can use to encrypt the rest of your passwords. And the idea is a lot of these tools will autofill your passwords once they've identified who you are. So as long as you can identify that you're Bob with your password manager, it'll decrypt the rest of your passwords and pass them through. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different examples out there, and you really, really do want to make sure that you're picking the right one for your use case and that meets your corporate requirements. But a password manager is a really good way where you start seeing you've got your corporate email and your banking details and your Aristotle, and everybody's kind of logging in from all sorts of places. You want to make sure that they're accessible from phones and iPads and laptops. These are a really good way of doing it. So the examples that I've got here, 1Password, LastPass, and Bitwarden, all have apps for your phone, and they can be used as like little browser extensions as well. They've got little apps that can kind of integrate with your desktop stuff as well. So the idea is no matter where you're trying to log on from, as long as you know your secure password, your 1Password, which is probably why they picked that name, but as long as you know your secure password, you can kind of have it autofill on your phone, your iPad, your laptop, your work computer, your home computer. When you go visit your mum or your kids or your grandparents, you know that they're all securely logged through this kind of device. Not really Aristotle specific, but like I said, really, really useful to know. The reason why we've said this is because securing your passwords and securing your accounts is really important, and strong passwords that are hard to guess and multi-factor authentication are the best ways to secure yourself online. It's really important when using a corporate tool like Aristotle to make sure that it's kept secure, but this goes for everything. And you'll probably find that a lot of your emails, your personal emails, your Facebooks, if you're a developer like me, your GitHubs, even your banks will all have ways that you can integrate these to what you're doing. So I would say, tell your friends, tell yourself, take 15 minutes. It's really easy. Set it up this afternoon because it's really important, and you can do it today. It's not very challenging, and these things aren't scary. And that's kind of why we front loaded this topic with all of this information. Is multi-factor authentication. It's not a complex term. It's having two or more things that identify me. Single sign-on just means trusting another server to log me on. They're not complex things, and you can do it. And it's a great way to protect your personal and your business accounts with that little asterisk in line with your corporate policies and so on. So just as a wrap up, these are some examples. And again, as I said, we're recording this one. We're going to put it online, and we'll be sharing it probably tomorrow. But the idea is, if you're looking at things, there are multi-factor applications you can get. There are physical devices you can buy if you want to go one step beyond. One thing that you'll see online is people talk about whether or not SMS should be used. There are risks that SMS numbers can be kind of spoofed and hacked and all these kind of complex things, but it's better than nothing. The important thing is, like, an extra factor isn't going to hurt, but there are better ways to do it. So my recommendation would be, the simplest way is grab your phone. I don't know if you can see it. Grab your phone and get a little authenticator app so that you can start doing this. It's the easiest and simplest way to get started. And then find a really nice password manager that you like. A lot of these are free and sponsored by security organizations. Do some research. There's some that are built into your browsers as well. They're really fantastic. So with that in mind, probably the next big step is, if all of this stuff is so great, how do I do it in Aristotle? What can I do? And that's the next part of this talk. So the first part was getting you up to speed and making sure everybody felt really comfortable with these kind of web security ideas. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to start looking at how are these things going to be configured in Aristotle. So what I'll do is I'll take a quick pause. And I guess if there's any questions that have come through, ask them in the chat. Or if anybody has any quick questions, feel free to kind of pipe in now. Will I switch my tabs over? Okay. In that case, I'm going to. Can you switch off MFA? You can. So somebody's asked if you can disable multi-factor authentication. A lot of places you can. If you've lost a device, you can switch it over. A lot of them will also give you recovery codes as well. And one thing that we will try and show this afternoon as well is, within Aristotle, if somebody loses their token or isn't able to log in, you can actually disable it for somebody else's account as well. So yes, you can disable your MFA if it's necessary. And it's not enabled by default in Aristotle either. So I'm going to go over here. Here we go. Okie dokie. So any other questions? No? Okay. I'm going to bring up my demo site and I'll share this one. So everybody should see a little Aristotle home screen. Yep. Nope. Lauren. Yep, cool. All right, great. So what we're going to run through here is we're going to run a quick demo through how Aristotle uses multi-factor authentication. I'm going to try and hold up my phone to show you what's going to be happening as well. But if you can't see, you're just going to have to trust me, I suppose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to log in. So this is, as you can see, this is just a little review app that we've spun up to demonstrate all this. So it's not using my actual password. So don't say that I've not got a long enough password, and I think it's that. Great. So I can't log in. I've given it the right username and password, but I haven't given it that extra bit. So I'm going to hold up to my camera. I don't know if people can see that. holding up to my camera, it's giving me 13 seconds to type in a little extra passcode, which will be this 980285. And if I log in right about now, if anybody else tried to log in, that one-time token has changed. So even if somebody was looking over my shoulder right now, they saw what I typed in as my password, and they saw what I typed in as that little one-time code that my Authenticator app gave me. They wouldn't be able to log in. So my account is still quite secure, which is really good. The way that I set that up is, or the way that we're going to be setting this up in future is, not now, go away. That's my password manager asking if I want to update anything. We've added down to the bottom of the profile, we've added this multi-factor authentication option. So this is where we can start setting this up. So this is going to be enabled by default for all enterprise clients of the Aristotle Metadata Registry from about 2 weeks. We're just going through final stages of testing, and one of those stages of testing is the user feedback today. So thank you everyone for coming along. If you've got any questions or suggestions, please let me know. So as you can see, I've gone into the settings, so I'll just go back. I click on multi-factor authentication and it shows it's enabled. So it tells me that I'll need to have a token to, or my phone to be able to log in. It also shows me that I can show any backup codes. So backup codes are really useful if you lose your device and it's a service that's not fully managed. So because Aristotle works with you, we can work with our administrators to make sure that if somebody loses their authentication device, they will still be able to log in. But if you're really worried, you can actually click show codes. You can generate some codes. You can print these off. They're just as powerful as a password, so they must be kept secure. So if you're not sure about how to do this, you can just kind of leave this one alone. But you can generate new codes, and then if you lose your device, then you've still got an option to log back in. And you can also deactivate all of those as well. So if you've used one and you know that the sheet of paper has been compromised, you can just scrap it and start again. The other thing I can do is I can disable multi-factor authentication, and I'll do that right now. So I'm going to disable that. Now, if somebody did have my password, they'd be able to log in. And I'm going to show you that so I can run you through the steps that you'll need to do to enable this in future. It's actually quite straightforward. So just going to remove this from my device. So you're not going to be able to see everything, but it was just like the PowerPoint slides earlier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click Enable Multi-Factor Authentication, and it's going to say follow the steps, really easy. I click Next, and it brings up this little QR code. Now, all I'm going to do in my phone is using my Authenticator app, and everybody's going to use a slightly different one. But the idea is if you hold that over your phone, you'll probably be able to see me in the camera. It interprets that code, and it tells me exactly what the future one-time codes are going to be. And to make sure that you've done it correctly, to verify everything's correct, you just need to enter one token as soon as you've got it all configured. So if I enter one in now, I click Next. And great, it's all configured. I go back. If I logged out and tried to log in again, I'd have some real problems, and I'd need to grab my phone to make sure everything worked. So multi-factor authentication, pretty straightforward. What you saw there about how we configured it for Aristotle is going to be really similar to everything else. So again, your bank, your email, your passwords, everything you've got is you can kind of start doing this today really simply, and you'll be a security wizard by the end of the week. One other option is the single sign-on. So this depends from enterprise to enterprise, but we just wanted to give you a quick overview of how it works. And to do that, I'm just going to log out, and I'm going to log back in again. And this time I'm not going to use my username and password. I'm actually going to sign in with Google. Hopefully I think I signed out. Actually, I'm going to open it in a new private browser. I'm already signed in with Google. Switch windows. Just share the screen. There we go. So we should be able to see my screen. So as you can see here, no. Oh, that's not good. What can we see? Is it this? Cool. All right, so I'm going to open my. This is terrible. These are These are demo password details, by the way. I should probably, oh well, screw it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in with Google to show you exactly how this kind of works. So we've created a throwaway account with Google. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in with Google. It's going to redirect me off to log in. So as you can see up the top, I've gone to, like, it's redirected me to https://accounts.google.com. So it's definitely a Google domain. So I'm not logging in with Aristotle right now. I'm logging in with a third-party provider, just like you do when you log in for work or when you log in to access your emails. So I'm just going to copy and paste these throwaway credentials. I'm going to log in as Jim, and then I'm going to copy in this password. So again, this password is only known to Google. Only Google knows this. And I'm going to hit next, and it's going to log me into Aristotle. So rather than having to log in through Aristotle, we can now configure it to set up against another authentication provider. Now this depends from enterprise to enterprise, and if your service or if your organization isn't using SSO yet, you won't have that option. But the idea is if they've configured single sign-on, we're able to connect directly via that. And the really great thing about that is if I log out of my Aristotle instance and then go to log back in, I'm going to sign in with Google. And because my Google account's still active, I just log in. So if you're logged into your work account, it'll just take you straight in without having to create an account. You won't have to log in. You won't have to provide your password because the back end will automatically know who you are. So what I'm going to do now, so that's our single sign-on. So we've done multi-factor authentication, check. We've done single sign-on, check. The last two things we're going to run through, I'm going to log back in here. So again, we're on our security throwaway server. So if anybody does anything silly, we'll just delete it. So I'm all logged in. I've got to grab my token. There we go. So I've logged in. The other thing we're going to look through is, as you can see, like the URL, like what we show up the top. Yeah, getting rid of that. What we show up the top is actually a part of that security as well. So it gives us trust in who's running the site. And I'm very, very proud to say that a lot of organizations now are starting to trust the aristotlecloud.io domain, but you may want to run it on your own domain. So this might be your own .com, it could be a .gov, a .gov.au, but the idea is if you want to run it on your own server, we can also assist with that. And we've actually built this into the tool now. So we've built a process behind the scenes that helps you set that up. The way that you can do that as an administrator is if you go to the cloud dashboard and configure your custom domain, it'll show you any domains that you've requested. So you can see earlier today I was testing this out and I've tried to get registry.myorganization.com requested. What I can do is I can say let's go registry.example.com.au and I'll submit that through. Now, as you can see, the request has been sent. What's about to come up on my screen is we'll get a notification that something needs to be done. We'll kick that off to our DevOps team who will start the process to make sure that you've got all the information necessary so that when you try and register your registry.example or registry.gov.au, you'll have all the information necessary to make sure that that process is smooth. And then from the moment that you receive those records, you'll be able to go to registry.mydomain.com and people will be able to log in and use your registry from there. So that's all of our user security stuff done, except for, okay, so there's one last user security thing that we're going to talk about today, and that's talking through setting up security policies. So this is a brand new one. I think we've had some really interesting and really good feedback from people who really like the roles and responsibilities that are available in Aristotle, but want to be able to control it back and kind of give people more or remove certain privileges from the site. And the two that we're going to be looking at today, we're really looking at the ability to edit content and then the ability to delete content as well. These are both really powerful actions, and we're basically going to be helping set it up so that users can control this, or like administrators can control this themselves. And this is an example of what we're looking at. And this is the example of the permissions that we're looking at adding into our metadata content security policies. And these will be things that users can control themselves. So what we're looking at here is the ability to disable certain membership levels or membership roles in stewardship organizations from editing locked content. So once content's been registered to a certain level, we're going to lock that down. And we're going to remove like the ability to remove some of those privileges as well. So stewards and administrators would no longer be able to edit content. And then the same for our work groups as well. So the idea is here, saying, look, a work group steward has a certain level of trust, but we don't want them editing locked registered content. We're going to have that tick box there as well. So we can set the security policies around the editing of content. And the other one we're going to be looking at is the security policies around the deletion of content. So as we've spoken about in the past with people, at the moment, the only way to delete content is to delete it from the sandbox, which is a little bit burdensome if it's gone through any life cycle process. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding in the ability for for registry administrators to basically control when and if a manager or a steward of a work group can delete unregistered content, whether or not stewardship organization members can delete content from there as well, and whether or not registry administrators can do the same thing. So the idea here is what we want to do is start pushing some of these privileges out a little bit and give a little bit more control to the administrators to give control further down. The way that we're going to be doing that is through the action box. So in the action bar, I'm just going to jump over here. Oops. Oh, we've got a question in chat. Do I have any content? No. I'll just go to Aristotle. Okay. We've got a question in chat. What's the question? I can't find it. I've got it here. Okay. Yes, users will still be able to delete their own content once it's been demoted, Tanya. So yes, they'll still be able to delete from their own dashboard. So as an example, we're going to be adding in an option in the dropdown to delete content. And if a user is no longer able to edit content, it'll be grayed out similar to how this one is here. So this item can't be registered because it's not in a stewardship organization. And if they've been locked out from editing an item, we'll gray this out and we'll have a little help notice here that says why they can't do that as well. So those are kind of the big things that we wanted to talk about from a security policy perspective. So we've got our multi-factor authentication, our single sign-on that needs to be configured at an enterprise level, our custom domains, and our security content policies. So I'll kind of open it up for questions as well. I'm going to see if I can toggle how I'm sharing as well. Sorry, Tanya, do you want to go off mute and ask that question? No. Can she go off mute?
She's off mute now.
Tanya, do you want to try asking that question again? No. We can't hear you. That's okay. So I think, no, I can't hear you at the moment, but I think it might be on my side. I'm just going to, oh, it's all the way up. Yeah. Let me just see here, device settings. So the question was, I can't read it. The question was, can users delete their, thank you for confirming that, Mark. Can users delete their own content once it's been demoted? Yeah, so if there's no registration statuses on it and it's been removed from workgroups, users will still be able to delete their content. But what they won't be able to do is they won't be able to delete their own things if it has been registered. unless they've been given special permissions through that content policy area. So that's when they'll be able to delete certain things. Were there any other questions on a security perspective? Anybody else? So I guess probably the most important thing is, before somebody asks, we're going to be rolling this out probably in the next 2 weeks. If it's not next Tuesday's release, it'll be the one after. So users should start seeing some differences just before Christmas. So Merry Christmas. We've got extra security. All right. Okay. All right. So probably one other thing to run through is we've made some minor changes to how users are selected as well. We got some really great feedback recently on not being able to assign multiple users to a work group or an organization, and we've basically done a quick revamp of the user drop downs to make it easier to add people and kind of start adding users into the system. Previously, you had to go one user at a time and assign a user to a role and submit, assign a user to a role and then submit. What we've done is we've basically changed it so that now, refresh the page. Now all you need to do is you can actually bulk add users in, and we've done a little bit of a visual refresh on this one, so we'd really welcome some feedback around this. The idea is if you wanted to add all 3 of these users as a member of the organization, you can add them in, and I'll just give membership permissions, and then it saves them all in. We can't bulk remove people yet, but the idea is if you've got 4 or 5 or 10 people who you know are at a specific level, you can add them in. So it reduces the amount of effort to bulk add users into the system down to basically once per permission level instead of once per user every time going through. So that's probably the biggest thing that we've got in the pipeline as well. That's probably going out in the next couple of days, I think. It's not for tomorrow, it'll definitely be next week. Yeah, so I guess that's probably everything I wanted to cover. It looks like we've got another question in the chat. Lauren will be very happy. Glad to hear, really glad to hear. I think a lot of the feedback around that came from Services Australia especially. So we're really glad to be adding that feature in. We are also looking at being able to kind of copy and paste a list of emails, but that's, I think, going to take a little bit longer. But you'll certainly be able to start typing and adding and typing and adding. And it's going to make it a little bit clearer to show which user it is. Things. Yeah, so that's the, I guess, the session that we had for today, and we're running pretty close to 5 o'clock now with regards to timing. Are there any big questions that people would like to see, or questions that people had around other parts of the platform, or any questions about the security stuff from today? I can see Tanya's typing. Okay, cool. Really great, Ari. Thank you. Yeah. So again, yeah, we're really trying to kind of give that flexibility around how people use this. I think we've started to hit some really good milestones with the product. I think we've ticked pretty much most of the things off the roadmap this year. So we're looking at a little extra value add for Christmas. So glad to hear it's got a big positive impact, Tanya. All right. 4:45. I think what we're going to do is we're basically going to wrap up. If anybody has any quick questions, just say hi in the chat. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap up. We're going to be packaging this up online probably tomorrow or Wednesday, and we'll be sharing this with everybody who is attending as well. So if you've got any big questions, or if you want to kind of recap, you'll have the recording online. That'll be on the community. If you've got any other questions, fire them through the community and we'll get back to you pretty quickly. And we encourage everybody to kind of ask questions of each other. Yeah, so thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Really glad to have this feedback. Really glad to have this turnout as well. And if you've got any questions, we look forward to following up with you. Thanks for being a part of the Aristotle community.